Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Julia if you are new. Today is election day. By the time you see this video, we will know the results of the election. But I have the day off from work. My workplace gives us the day off for voting. And I've been having a nice relaxing day to help take my mind off of the state of the world. So my goal for this afternoon is to do some baking. I want to test a recipe that I found that I think is going to be the birthday cake that I make for my son's first birthday, which is coming up at the end of the year. My son has an egg allergy, so we need to obviously be very cognizant about what we feed him when it comes to baked goods and everything. So in another world, I probably would have just gone to a bakery for him, but we're gonna be traveling for the holidays, visiting my husband's family, and I just don't feel like going through the effort to find an allergen-friendly or vegan bakery in Hawaii, because that's where we're gonna be. So I've been looking online trying to find some recipes, and this one has really, really good reviews. It is a vegan recipe, but I am not going to make it fully vegan. I'm just gonna use the recipe as a base, but instead of plant-based milk, I'm gonna use regular milk. Instead of vegan butter, I'm gonna use regular butter. It's just built around not having eggs in it, which I think is really great. I originally thought I was gonna find just a regular cake recipe and substitute the eggs out for an egg replacement, such as a flax egg or applesauce, or even buying like just egg, sort of egg replacement. But I found this recipe and it looks really promising. What I'm gonna do, instead of making this into a cake, I'm gonna make cupcakes. I'll probably freeze most of them because we don't need all the sweets in the house. It is election day. It has not even been a week since Halloween, and we are consuming Halloween candy. So we don't need a full, 12 cupcakes at our disposal right now. Anyway, I'm gonna get this recipe started and I'll take you along. Okay, I already got my muffin tin lined with cupcake liners. I'm gonna set that aside. I'm gonna wait just a few minutes to preheat my oven just because it is warm today, even though it is November, and so I'm trying not to heat up my entire house and make us turn on the air conditioning because nobody needs the air conditioning in November. The next thing I'm gonna do is make some buttermilk, essentially. I have here some lemon juice and 1.25 cups of milk. It's actually a little more than 1.25 cups, so I hope that's gonna be okay. I didn't measure that very well. But I'm gonna add a tablespoon of lemon juice and set this aside basically to thicken up and do its thing. Give that a little stir. The next step in this recipe is to melt my butter and combine it with my sweetener. The recipe gives different options of like golden syrup, which is not really a thing in the US as far as I know, corn syrup, maple syrup. I already have maple syrup on hand, so that's what I'm gonna use. And the recipe says your cakes will be slightly less sweet if you use maple syrup, and I figure that's probably a great idea for my baby, since he's gonna be 1 year old and he doesn't really need anything extremely sweet. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. So I'll put 2/3 cup of butter to melt in my saucepan with the maple syrup to get those combined. The recipe also says that you can add in like instant espresso powder just to help bring out the richness. I'm not gonna bother to do that because again, this is for my son's birthday and he's a baby and what does he know? So we're gonna omit that, but if I wasn't omitting that, if I was including it, that would also go into this mixture that's going to melt on the stove. I did forget to take my butter out of the freezer ahead of time, but luckily for the cake, it's gonna get melted, so I don't even need it to be soft. So this is 1/2 cup, and then I will cut this to the right size. So I'll need to reserve 1/3 cup, and this leftover piece will make 2/3 in my pot. Great, I will get this on to melt. And at the same time, I'll get in my 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. This is the real stuff. I grew up in New England, and I just came from a family that always used real pure maple syrup, not like pancake syrup. So that is what we consume in this house. While that butter is melting, I'm gonna get my dry ingredients mixed together. I am not usually one to sift my dry ingredients, but the recipe does call for it. And I wanna give this recipe the best shot at success, so that's what I'm gonna do. I need 2 1/4 cups of flour. That's half, 1. Next is 4 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa. It does not call for like dark Dutch process cocoa, but I have this from some Christmas cookies I made last year, and I just think the flavor is so great. So 4 tablespoons, if you did not know, is equivalent to 1/4 cup. So that is what I'm gonna get into my sieve. I need 3/4 cup of white sugar, so this is my half cup. And 1/4 cup, there we go. And finally, I need 3 teaspoons of baking powder, which is also 1 tablespoon, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And this is why it's nice to sift your ingredients, because there's some big crunchy bits of sugar that are not going to get nice and fine. I'm just going to stir these to combine and get everything nice and mixed together and homogeneous. And you know what? I need to get my oven preheating as well, because now we are getting close to being ready to bake. I'll pour my milk in, and I'll get my butter as well. I'm gonna double check. I believe the recipe says to really just mix until combined. Like, you don't want to beat this. You don't want to over mix it. You really just want to get all of the wet mixed in well with the dry. It smells like chocolate cake batter. That's a good sign. While my oven is finishing coming to temp, I am going to start getting these tins filled with cupcake batter. Whoops, already making a mess. The recipe doesn't necessarily say how full to fill your cupcake tins, because it is written for a cake. It just says if you want to make cupcakes, you can, you know, put it into 12, and it gives the time for how long you should bake them versus, you know, cake rounds. So I'm going to start on the lower end and then go in and sort of like fill the rest in once there's already some in every tin, because the worst thing is to overfill and then realize that you don't have enough to go around into all of your cupcakes. Okay. There's still quite a bit of batter. So, like I said, we'll just divide this between all of the cupcakes here. There's some, especially on this side, the first ones that I filled, that are quite low. So we'll start there and just kind of bring everything up to even. And I'm gonna give this a wipe down. You know, I've made some messes here just because it makes it a little bit easier for cleanup, to not have to chip away at like baked on, caked on messes. Okay, oops, that was a lot. Yeah, this does smell really good. I wonder if it was partly because I used that Dutch process cocoa. It's just like a darker color and a richer, more chocolatey flavor. You know, actually this smells like brownie batter. I wonder if it's gonna have like a brownie taste to the cupcakes. I know that's kind of a silly thing to say because it's like, oh, aren't brownies just chocolate and isn't chocolate cake chocolate? Yes, that is true, but like there is a unique flavor to a brownie. It doesn't just taste like chocolate cake. And I'm gonna take a spoon and just sort of like smooth the tops of some of these. That one is extra full. And then this is just a damp paper towel. Got some of these messes wiped up. That was my oven. Perfect timing. I'm gonna pop these cupcakes into the oven for 15 to 20 minutes. So I will set for 15, I'll test with a toothpick, and we'll go from there. Well, these are in the oven. I'm going to get my kitchen cleaned up. There is a frosting recipe that comes with this recipe. There's a frosting recipe that is part of the recipe, which I could make now. I'm gonna actually just wait a little bit. I'd rather get my kitchen cleaned because you can't frost these until they're completely cool anyway. So they're gonna come out of the oven and they're gonna have to sit. So there's no huge need to like get the frosting made and ready because it's gonna be a while before we frost them. So instead, I'll do some dishes, wipe down my counters, and I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, I just pulled the cupcakes out of the oven. I tested them at 15 minutes and they were still like liquid in the middle. So I put them in for a full 5 minutes additional and I think they're perfect. I'm a little worried that they might be a tiny bit overdone, but better than raw in the middle, I think. So now I am going to let these cool completely. So first I'll just keep them in this pan for like 5 minutes and then I will transfer them to a cooling rack and let them come all the way down to room temperature. In the meantime, I am gonna get my frosting made. It's very few ingredients, so hopefully this will be nice and easy. I definitely don't need a bowl this big, but it's what I already have out because I used it for the batter and I washed it and cleaned it. Here we go. I have my 1/3 of a cup of butter that is remaining from the cupcake batter. Next I need 1 2/3 cups of powdered sugar, also called confectioner's sugar. And I'm gonna be a little naughty and just eyeball 2/3. Because this isn't baking, this is just mixing all these ingredients into a frosting, I'm not super concerned about the measurements being completely precise. I need another 4 tablespoons or a 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa. And finally, I need 2 teaspoons of water. Grab my hand mixer and the beaters. And basically, I'm just gonna blend this until completely combined and nice and smooth. That makes a lot of sense. I added 2 teaspoons of water, but it calls for 2 tablespoons. So I just need to add 4 more teaspoons. The conversion here is 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, and I put in 2 teaspoons, and I need 6 teaspoons to make 2 tablespoons. Anyway. Though I will admit, that doesn't look like a whole lot when I make these for real. If we like the recipe, when I make these for real for my son's birthday, I can just increase the recipe. All right, I am gonna give this frosting a taste. It's quite sweet, but it's also very chocolatey. Again, I wonder if that Dutch processed cocoa has anything to do with that flavor. When I make this in the future, I think we definitely need more frosting. I guess we'll see once I get things iced. But I also want to make sure that I sift the sugar and the cocoa for the frosting as well. I did not do that because the recipe didn't specifically say to do it, and I figured we're getting it all blended up, it should be fine. But I can definitely taste like a little bit of, not quite grittiness, just like little balls of stuff in the frosting. I don't particularly mind, but making this for a birthday party, I want to put my best foot forward and I want to make the best product that I can. So I think it's about time that I can set these to cool on my drying rack, my cooling rack. But I do think perhaps I'm gonna taste just one of them, even though they're not all the way cool, with a little bit of frosting. It'll melt, but that's okay. I'm just curious to know how these taste and I don't really want to wait. I'm gonna take one of the smaller ones. They're all pretty equal in size, I will say. But I do want to see how the flavor is. Yeah, immediately the frosting is starting to melt, which is okay. I knew that that was gonna happen. This is really just for my own taste test, and I'll see if my husband wants a taste as well. The texture on this is so light and airy. It's not quite as like spongy as an angel food cake or like devil's food cake, but it's really, really light. The flavor is not very sweet, which I kind of knew because I was using the maple syrup instead of like corn syrup, but I kind of like it. I don't know, maybe I'll experiment again using corn syrup, but I am definitely not offended. When we first got my son's allergy diagnosis, I was talking to my mom on the phone and I was like, well, I guess this is a new challenge. I'm gonna have to learn how to bake without eggs. And she was like, can you bake without eggs? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, like, vegans can eat baked goods. There is a such thing. And she was like, oh yeah, I guess that's right. So this is my first foray into baking without eggs. It has felt a little bit, not overwhelming, just kind of disheartening. Even though he's not eating a huge variety of table foods at this point, everything that I consume, I check the label to see like, is this something that we could feed him? And there are so many things that contain eggs or are processed in a facility that may contain eggs, like all of these things. And at this point, we don't know the level of his allergy. We just know that he is allergic to just like regular cooked scrambled type eggs and eggs that are baked into things. So any risk of contamination with eggs, we are completely steering clear at this point. That might not always be the case, and hopefully it is not. Just thinking about like the things that are so easy, pancakes, muffins, pasta a lot of the time may contain egg, even if it's just like semolina and water in the ingredients. There can be cross-contamination in the facilities. So it's felt a little bit frustrating just thinking about like, what are we gonna feed him as he eats more and more solid food? This is giving me a little glimmer of hope. Obviously, I know that I can bake. I know that I can make things from scratch for him and not have to worry about the possibility of, you know, cross-contamination with eggs. But making something from scratch that turned out like really well feels encouraging to me, and it feels like I can seek out more egg-free recipes and not have to worry about not being able to give my son all the things that I always pictured that he would have. We will see what happens, but for now, I think this is probably the recipe that I'm gonna go with for his first birthday cake. The ingredients were not crazy. It's gonna be easy enough to get all this stuff together when we are at my in-laws over the holidays. I need to save the other half for my husband. Stop eating. Okay, this is my half-eaten cupcake, but I figured you would be okay with that. Just take a bite. Don't. Okay. Oh my God, Michael, be honest.
That's really good.
You have some in your mustache.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
like
I can't taste that there's no egg.
It's not
it tastes like a
really
good
sweet,
cupcake.
right? Like
it's not. I mean, it's sweet enough.
Right, but it's not like, ooh.
Yeah, it's really good.
Thank you. Do you think it's
What are you
good
doing
enough?
with the rest of that cupcake?
It's yours. Do you think this is good enough to serve for our son's birthday?
Yeah.
You heard it here, folks. Well, that is all for today's video. I want to thank you so much for watching. I am curious, are you either vegan or allergic to eggs or have some other dietary restriction that has you cooking and baking without eggs? If you are, what are your favorite recipes? Are there certain websites or like food bloggers that you are a fan of that has great recipes? I would love to know because I'm looking to expand my repertoire of egg-free treats and such that I'll be able to serve my baby. Thank you again for watching. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. It really does help my channel grow and reach new people. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye, guys.